Now you know how exponential, the form works and how it's calculated, how to move back and forth from exponential form to multiplication form. Now let's talk about the language that's used. And math is its own language, so there are ways we communicate, and there's terminology we use. I don't think it's necessarily you always memorize the terminology, but some people may use it, so it's good to be exposed to it so you know what they're talking about. In this case, when we're talking about an exponential number, when they refer to the base, it's the base. It's to me, it looks like a base. It's what the number's built on, because the 6 is kind of hanging out up here. So the 2, to me, it's obviously a base. And then the exponent is the thing in the upper right corner. So the 6 is the exponent here, the 2 is the base. So base to the exponent, 2 raised to the 6, base exponent. Just some exposures, so when you hear those terms used, you'll know exactly what it's talking about. Now let's get into some more calculation. What I want to hit on is a common mistake maker, a common misconception when we're dealing with exponential numbers. And we're going to look at 2 situations over the next couple of lessons or videos. These look somewhat the same, but they're entirely different, and it has a little bit to do with the order of operations, which we'll get into more later. But the order of operations requires we pay attention to what's in parentheses first, which we have a -2, and then we do the exponent right after we've paid attention to whatever's in parentheses. So these 2 will yield 2 completely different answers. We're going to focus on this scenario first, and then we'll go into the second one. It's worth spending some time on these and practicing a little bit, because common that mistakes are made on these problems. And they're easy to make mistakes, but they're also easy to get right. So let's focus on practicing them and getting them right. -2 to the 5th power is the same as saying -2 times -2 5 times. I did it again. It should be a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -2 multiplied 5 times is exactly what that communicates. Notice I multiplied the negative each time because the parentheses tell me that the negative is included in the power. I've got to multiply the negative as well as the 2. They can be separate things, which we'll see in the next situation in the next video. So when I multiply 2 to the 5th power, -2 times -2 is positive 4. Took care of those 2. Then 4 times -2 is -8 times -2 times -2. -8 times -2 is positive 16 times -2. And 16 times -2 is -32. So it ends up being a -32. And we multiplied a negative 5 times, and so that kind of makes sense that it ends up being negative if we follow the rules of signed numbers or of integers. And then 2 to the 5th power, 2 5 times is 32. Now you don't have to show your work like that or carry it out each time. A lot of times you'll be able to do these in your head. Let's look at another one. Inside parentheses, -3 to the 4th power. Same thing. This is telling me to multiply -3. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So -3 to the 4th power is -3. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Now I'm going to kind of go through, we better work through this in detail, but some of you may be able to do this in your head for the most part. I would be careful with that, because when you start to work math in your head, that's a time when we often make mistakes. So -3 times -3 is a positive 9. I've still got 2 -3's to multiply. 9 times -3 is -27. Another -3 to multiply. -27 times -3, you may not know this one, is a positive 81. So there's our final answer. Notice how when we multiplied the -4 times, we get a positive. In the last example, we multiplied the -5 times, an odd number, and we got a negative. Anyway, not incredibly difficult, but it's surprising how many times these types of problems are solved incorrectly. So -9 to the 4th, here's a good example of when hopefully your teacher will just allow you to pull out a calculator and evaluate this, because it becomes a very big number. I wanted to throw this up here just to ask you a question. If I have -9 to the 4th power, is it going to be positive or negative? Think about that for a second. Hopefully you said positive because this is an even number, and when I multiply a negative together 4 times, I'm going to get a positive. The answer to negative 9 to the 4th power is 6,561. There's a little button on your calculator, and it looks like this. It says x to the y. And the way it usually works is you enter this number in the negative 9. Make sure you put the negative 9. I'd put it in parentheses. And then hit this button, and then you hit the 4. So with this one, you might just practice using your calculator a little bit, because eventually you'll be able to use it to evaluate these.